Thanks for tuning in to another episode. We have a busy one today, so we're going to jump right in. Today, Alex and I are sitting down with two lovely ladies and fellow podcasters from the Lancaster Chamber. So we're excited to welcome Ashley Glenzer, the Programs and Workforce Strategies Manager, and Molly Krauser, the Director of Events and Partnerships. Together, they make up the hosts of What's on Tap Lancaster, a podcast for young business professionals looking for insights related to the business community. So thanks for being here. We're excited to have you. We enjoy your podcast and getting to hear from so many different voices in the community. And we love the idea that you guys had to highlight a different craft beer or drink.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to start by asking, do you have a favorite out of all of the many you've tasted?
You go.
I don't remember what it's called.
I know, I don't either. It was the Luau one from last summer. Don't be mad at me, whatever brewery it was. I don't remember.
Was it Funk?
I think it was Funk
Brewing.
It was a Funk one. It
Luau.
was something Luau, and it was like an IPA, but it had fruity and like citrus and grapefruit and like all that. And it was summertime when we did it, so it was like refreshing.
Sounds good, yeah.
There was a lemonade sour from our town brewery that we featured a couple of months ago. That was a hit. For me.
I've never been to Our Town Brewery.
No, I haven't either. Was it us? We were just talking about sour beers? Or was that a different?
Must have been your other podcast host.
That's Ashley's go-to sour beer.
I love
sour
sours.
beers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. As close as you can get to the original beer.
And definitely check out Our Town.
Yeah.
They have really good beers. They've been a really good partner for us.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Do we just want to start by you sort of giving us a rundown of what you do at the Chamber?
Yeah,
Sure.
Why don't you go ahead?
Sure. I'm the Director of Events and Partnerships. And so it's kind of a little two-party, but also kind of related. So I manage 6 signature events that span from a leadership type event for around economics to our annual dinner, which is our kind of big fundraiser every year. And then I also work with our sponsorships. And I help to strategize with the team around kind of what does the full year of events, programs, resources, initiatives that the Chamber's doing. Kind of work into that with the leadership team as well. And then I do partnerships, which is just kind of the fun side of things. I get to kind of talk with people, decide how we can benefit, how they can benefit, and try to come together with some level of a strategic partnership with them.
Awesome.
That's cool.
And Molly is the queen of events. I just want to say annual dinner. It's not like a small annual dinner.
no.
How many people have you?
About 22,000 to 25,000
A year?
people.
Come?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh
just
my
something
gosh,
like
I
that.
didn't realize it was that big.
Yeah.
That's
It
awesome.
is.
Crazy.
It's a
A
8 month
logistical
a year
Yeah.
event. You know, it takes
Yeah.
a little bit of time, but
Wow. So you're already planning
yes.
for
Yeah.
2024s.
Yep. Yeah.
exciting.
Started about 2 months ago, actually.
Oh.
So, yeah.
It
we're-
probably already has 2025 like in the back.
We have
Some
dates.
She has the
seeds.
date.
Some
Yeah.
dates and seeds of thematic elements. But it's our largest fundraiser of the year, so it really helps sustain kind of chamber-wide what we do. And also it's just kind of a pillar in the community at this point, which we love. And getting together with businesses from across the region, really, and particularly Lancaster County, to just celebrate Lancaster.
Yeah.
And like have a good time together, and especially like pointing out the impact that business has on Lancaster too. So
That's so
yeah.
cool.
It's a fantastic event.
Yeah.
It's fun. I am the Programs and Workforce Strategies Manager. So I feel like a lot of us at the Chamber, you're going to say, like, it's a dual role. You know, we have these other parts that we also do. So I manage 5 different programs. And then on the other side of that, I also oversee kind of the development of our workforce strategy. And so we have a couple of buckets around attracting and retaining talent, strengthening the current workforce, preparing the future workforce, anticipating trends and needs, and also addressing like barriers to workforce. So there's a lot of kind of things in those areas that I might be sitting in on conversations with partners on, or bringing in ideas and trying to develop pathways for the chamber to step into those spaces. But on the program side, the Young Professionals Network, which is where the podcast stemmed from, as well as Women in Business, our roundtables, Excellence Exchange, and our largest business and education partnership, which is Discovering Paths, a high school mentoring and career exploration program. So a lot going on for both of us.
That's all you do.
So,
Right.
but it's really exciting.
Yeah, sounds like it.
That's awesome. So I guess, like, how did your backgrounds prepare you for sort of where you landed in the chamber?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
So I, weirdly enough, served as an intern my senior year of high school at the Lancaster Chamber, and went to college, went to Susquehanna University. And when I left Lancaster, despite going a little more rural, was like, I'm not coming back.
Right.
So I went through Susquehanna. I did a stint in Ensenada, Mexico with a nonprofit, and did a year of AmeriCorps Vista in Massachusetts, and the plan was to stay in Boston. And I visited one weekend, and Lancaster was different. Like, it was changed. It was not when I left at 18 and I came back at 23. It was like, oh, this place is really cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really neat stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so I utilized the network that I still had maintained through that time, and got in touch with the chamber, and they said, we have an events position. And I said, events and nonprofit, it was kind of my way into the nonprofit space. And so I was like, yeah. They're like, you want it? We're like, I said, yeah, sure. I'm looking for a job. So, and so it worked out really nicely that way. But I was a sociology major and diversity studies minor. And so I always had interest in kind of community development, place development. We kind of talk about like home as place. And so that kind of, how does the intersection of all of those elements come together to build and grow a place? And so I get to do that every day at the chamber, which is pretty cool.
That is cool.
I am not from Lancaster. I'm a transplant. But so there's a lot of overlap. We have a lot of similarities in our journeys. Mine's been very nonlinear. So I am from Franklin County, so I'm 2 counties over, so not too far. But I went to Messiah College, now Messiah University, and studied psychology and sociology, which is, I was a research focused, also interested in community development. So originally I was like, I'm going to go to grad school. But when I first stepped out, and that was because of a curiosity of people and the way that they interact with systems. And I think that curiosity for the way people interact in the workplace, in their social settings, really has helped become a cornerstone of how programs are designed in the nonprofit sector. And so that's been really helpful in my career. But I actually stepped into a program management internship my first year out of school with International Justice Mission in Kolkata, India.
Oh, wow.
And while I was there, really got to dive in, really just like threw me in. It was fantastic. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And I got to work with executive leadership. They were crafting a strategic plan, so I got to learn how to operationalize that, the whole process from program design to implementation, and then the evaluation and monitoring. So in that year, really was exposed to so much. So when I came back, I just was like, I was going to do research, but now I think I really like program management. So tried a couple of things and landed at the YWCA in Carlisle, where I managed the department that did a lot of their mission-related programming. And so I got married in 2020. It brought me to Lancaster, and I found a job open in programming. And I was like, I really want to apply this to the business community and see what type of work we can do to make some headway. I really appreciated the Chamber's mission and vision, and I heard such great things about the leadership and the staff, and so it was kind of a no-brainer to join.
That's crazy. 2020 as a programming person, like, I'm sure that was such a shift for you too, because not only is it a new job, but also like the world literally shut down. So I'm sure programming wasn't even that popular at the time. Like, how did you manage like starting the new position and then the like whole transition of COVID era?
Yes.
So fun. Yeah.
So fun.
I'm sure you loved that time of your life.
It was a really great
So
time.
I didn't transition until 2021.
Okay.
I was remote with my role at the YWCA for several months until I made the transition. But I was remote for the first 3 months, entirely remote at the chamber. And I honestly will say my first reaction when I saw people at that in-person staff meeting was like, you're taller than I thought, and you're shorter than I thought, or like we're the same height. And I did not realize that. It was really just body proportions.
Right.
Like, you're looking at someone in a small screen, and you don't really know how they, and it just, they took some really incredible measures to make me feel welcome. I was one of 3 new hires during that remote period, and created videos, always had calls to really touch base. But it was an exploratory time. And I think you said it, we were talking through this earlier, but it really helped refine kind of what programming looked like and where we were investing our time. And that's true for me, whether it was the YWCA and figuring out innovative ways to connect students to the programming that we were doing, or it's at the chamber, how do we get business professionals the resources that they need to be successful in this very challenging time.
Yeah. That I'm sure was a whole different whirlwind of
Yeah.
things to do. Okay, so we'll kind of keep going there. So have you started there as mid-COVID, but even when you started a decade ago, which is congratulations for a decade.
Not yet.
Oh,
We counted this the other day.
So
About 9 years. No, I'm just kidding. I'm like, okay, you're aging me. No. Yeah, almost a decade.
Yeah, which
As of
is
next year.
honestly incredible.
Yeah.
So how has your mindset changed going through that, and especially working so closely with all of the small businesses and like the community of Lancaster? How has your mindset shifted to like where you are today from when you started?
So when I started, like I said, I kind of worked in nonprofit community development and had a kind of a certain mindset. That meant a lot of catching up on the business side of things. I had not worked in a corporate setting. And so I think over the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time and energy understanding business motives, business structure, corporate structure, big, small, little, sole prop entrepreneur, like, whatever that looks like. And so really taking in a lot of that has been a growth for anybody who works at the chamber, particularly those who come from more of a nonprofit background, because it's just the structure's different, right? And so we're serving a community, both nonprofit and for-profit, but kind of the learning curve of getting to know that for-profit side was certainly something that for myself evolved over the 10 years. And I think the chamber itself has evolved so much over the last 10 years, I would say. It's existed for 150 years. And so part of the chamber's history is I only know this because we celebrated our 150th on July 22nd, 1872. The Lancaster Chamber started because a group of business people gathered together for convening and trying to get a paved road. And that same thing happens today. We're convening and networking and bringing people together to get things done for our broader business and community. And so that hasn't changed. I think the way we deliver some of that message, the lens that we put on that message, the ways that we challenge our businesses to do things differently, how we look to the future, how we meet needs and anticipate needs, that all has significantly changed, right? And so I think it's not this exponential way of doing things. It's being ahead of where we think our businesses are going and meeting the need and anticipating it in a way that feels like we can remain really important in our community. I think the pandemic was very helpful, whether we like it or not. I wrote on my notes, I was like, the pandemic was miserable. But also what it did for us as an organization was build some confidence in the necessity of a chamber in a community like ours. We were able to funnel a ton of government funds through us in a partnership with the EDC so that business was sustainable during the pandemic. We were able to get and deliver a ton of information on the fly, being adaptable and flexible and ready to go at whatever information was coming in, and being able to deliver it on them in the minute or within the 24 hours, and being able to serve to the business community exactly exactly how we have been, but at this time when it was so critical and in that moment. And so I think we built a confidence in ourselves to say, okay, we matter.
Yeah.
The work we does matter. And so let's focus in, let's get really good at what we do and kind of like move on. So I think that there's been, as a lot of businesses have felt, and a lot of companies and organizations have felt, this kind of sense of self during pandemic, we felt that for sure. And I think it's visible now when we think about our strategic direction, our strategic focus about the things that we do for the community and the businesses that exist in it.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's great. This is a question that wasn't on.
That's fine. I feel like I am throwing this out the window.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really have to.
I'm just curious, like, how do you work with other local, like, chambers? Like, how often do you meet with them to sort of, like, help your strategy?
So it depends on what size you want to go to. So we have partnerships and relationships with all of our Lancaster County chambers. So we are the only county-wide chamber. So we cover the city, county, all of the small towns, any industry, all the businesses. There's 11,000 businesses. We cover 50% in just our membership, 50% of that workforce, with about 1,400 member companies. And so we have a strategic relationship, I would say, with those folks, particularly when messaging needs to get out. When we saw it during the pandemic, when we have specific things that we want everybody in the county to know, we tap into that strategic kind of network. But they exist differently on their own. They have their own organizations and that kind of thing. Regionally, we have really great partnerships with York Chamber Economic Alliance. I'm going to try to get all of their names correct. Harrisburg CREDIC, which is Harrisburg Chamber and Economic Development Company, Reading Chamber, GRCA, which is Greater Reading Chamber Alliance, Lehigh Valley, we've got some good relationships within, Lebanon Valley, we've got some good relationships in, but we work strategically. I think we know as a world that we exist in not just the place that we're in, but in the region that we are. And so we have a pro-business agenda, a regional pro-business agenda that's a partnership with all of them. Our other folks in our same jobs, we all have relationships with those people in those organizations, so that we're kind of shared networking, shared learning with each other in a way that's, I think, really helpful for the businesses that exist not only in Lancaster County but are members of all three, or or have offices in all three of the counties or areas. And so I think there's a really good strategic alignment between all of us on that.
And this is a little bit really deep into chamber world, but there is an association of Chamber of Commerce executives. There's a PA Chamber of Commerce kind of association as well. And then we also are connected to the U.S. Chamber. So on issues like workforce, we can get connected to 50 other chambers to 1,000 other chambers who might be focused in on a same issue. And a lot of times that collaboration might look like, childcare has been a huge issue. It always has been, but really COVID brought that to the surface. And a really good example of this partnership that we have is across Pennsylvania. A few weeks ago, several chambers came together to spearhead a letter to our legislative body saying, hey, this is very important. We should take a look at it. We have a stance here that we need to be creating accessible, affordable, and high-quality childcare, and also identifying life-sustaining wages for our childcare workers. And so, that letter came to us. Then we shared that out with our contacts. And so, several chambers, a significant portion of the chambers in Pennsylvania signed on to that letter. So that's kind of how our networks really work.
There's tentacles of chambers in all communities. It's just how they're tapped into. And so I was just actually in Bedford County for the PACP over the weekend. And so they also vary in size and energy and staff size and membership size and county size and all of that. But there's a connection point between all of us in that we're chambers. So there's some good strategic alignment across a number of areas that helps to kind of keep the chamber mission, which we all kind of share, alive and above and moving. So
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I know. I feel like I'm learning so much more about the chamber. I need to actually do it.
Yeah.
we love that. We love that.
We'll post, this past year we were nominated. We were one of the honorees for Chamber of the Year. We didn't win this year, but we
applied and
we were honored.
Yeah, love that.
And we're like ACCE recognized, and I feel like sometimes people are like, what is ACCE? This is great, but what is ACCE?
Yeah.
I was like, it's a combination of 7,000 chambers across the country, and we were in top 3 in our category, right? Well, actually, 7,000, I don't know actually about, but a significant portion, and it's a national society, essentially, association.
Yeah.
But we learn a lot. Chambers are a bit different in structure in that we're a membership organization, and so we are funded. A significant portion of our funding comes through members who give us money for value, and part of our value is we advocate for you in the state capitol or in the federal or whatever that looks like. Some of that is we've got professional development for you, but anybody who's a chamber works in that kind of function, and so there are membership dues that people pay, and so there's a lot. We're not a publicly funded organization. We have it's because of the businesses that we have in our community and the membership organization that we get to do the things that we do. And that's a different model than a lot of other nonprofits or community benefit organizations that you look at, because it's relational and a bit transactional in nature. And so really trying to pay attention to what that looks like. But that's what makes chambers a little unique. So it's nice to have a network of chamber people that all have to think about that same way of existing or the same way of functioning as an organization, and so it's been really helpful to be a part of those groups.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sweet. So
best of luck getting 35 minutes out of this.
Yeah.
What are we at?
Let's
minute
just
30.
get
This is section
This is a
3.
two-parter for sure. I just want to touch on diversity, equity, and inclusion because that was like a big point of emphasis on your site. I guess just how have you seen the community grow over the time that you've been at the chamber?
So it's interesting. This is a diversity, equity, inclusion for the chamber has always been something that we've talked about. It's been a part of our existence before it was a kitschy set of words that people use to describe something that's much, much bigger and very, very important. And so we have elevated it to our strategic plan in the last 3 years. Next year will be the last year of our 2022 to 2024 strategic plan, of which it's a pillar of the 5 pillars. And so as an organization, elevating it to that made us think about it a little bit differently, and also makes us think about how the rest of our community and our businesses interact with that. And so we've got programming that we do in relation to it, but more importantly, I think we have a lens that everything we do gets flown through the lens of thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, which is a mindset change. And I think what we've found is a lot of our businesses are either at the point of changing that from a pillar to a lens, or we're already doing it but are now talking about it and more comfortable talking about it a little bit. So I think the lens piece is the thing that's changed for us in the last couple of years, but really I think has changed as a conversation, has been like, what does this look like to apply it to everything that we do as a community.
And I think that we've been able to really seize the moment. I mean, we stepped into a partnership, a coalition of other civic organizations across Lancaster County, and we're able to partner with the National Equity Atlas to produce Lancaster County's racial equity profile. I mean, in that report alone, when you look at race as one of the indicators in the DEI framework, $1.9 billion a year is lost because of racial inequity. And so when you're able to kind of build a business case of why these things matter, I mean, and that's just one aspect of DE&I work. So what does it look like then to champion other tenets and aspects of DE&I and to communicate to businesses why this is so important? And we are so fortunate to have a business community. We have a number of businesses who are so bought into this and who are championing movements that we can highlight and elevate. And there, there's already so many organizations that do work and serve historically marginalized community members, like Assets, that really shines a light on BIPOC entrepreneurs and women who want to start a business and may have a lot more barriers than your traditionally served entrepreneurs. And so I think that's been important. I also think that in addition to the transformation of workplace dialogue, one thing that I've seen is just access to education. I mean, we talk about social media a lot at the chamber, and it's at our fingertips now. So I mean, even since I've been in the workplace, a lot of these conversations have really grown because the resources are more widely spread and shared, and there's access. McKinsey does reporting, Deloitte does reporting on some of these big firms really pull these reports together around nationwide or international issues, and that's so accessible now to have that conversation and then to take that, look at it from a local lens and pull out companies to say, okay, how can we champion this together and find a way forward?
And what does it look like for them? I mean, part of this is matching to people's journeys and challenging preconceived notions of what, just generally speaking, diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like. Right. And what does it mean for your organization? And what are ways to think about it strategically and on this like whole movement forward of like your leadership down. But it also is like, what are we doing every day to think about these things? So what does accessibility look like? What is making sure that folks have access to mental health, what am I trying to say? Mental health resources. Sure, we'll go with that. Mental health resources and, just the items that we also sometimes think of are not DEI are things that businesses are already doing. And so how do we support into create opportunities for people to plug in where it matches to where they are now and then challenge them to keep thinking about it?
And we know that DEI, this is a value of Gen Z and every generation before. Millennials, it really emerged as a strong tenet. Gen Z has really taken that on as they come into the workplace. And then, we have conversations around what does the generational perspective look like? And when you look at values, that's an increasing part of the workplace and attracting and retaining your talent. And so, I think there's a lot of interest in businesses of how do we, showcase our values in a way that connects to our employees.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
would agree with that. I feel like as a Gen Zer,
From 2 millennials to 2 Gen Zers.
this generational divide. But I think that is something too that I look for in a community and like where I buy things and where I eat my food, or kind of even the whole like reduce, reuse, recycle, and like thrifting and like that kind of stuff has just been very important. So I think it's very encouraging, at least from a outside perspective, to see how diverse Lancaster, even just like in this city, and even when you said you serve like 11,000.
Yeah, well, there's 11,000 businesses in Lancaster County.
And so, even if you think, and like, I'm sure you guys get this, as a diverse, like, Lancaster City versus, like, I grew up in, like, Gap, PA, if you guys, like, very different towns and very different businesses and structures. So it's just cool to see that you guys kind of cover all of that.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah.
It's a very tailored approach.
Yeah.
I also really liked what you said about how the day-to-day, like thinking about how you incorporate into that day-to-day, because I think that is what's going to set the tone for, like, the future.
Right.
So, like, making sure that eventually it's just going to become, like, part of your
part of who we
decision.
are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
it's
that's
a
great.
lens without having to call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really cool.
Okay, so we'll move in a little bit to the present. So we've talked a lot about the past, your mindsets, and how things have changed. Moving into the present, I need to find number 2. Okay, you've kind of talked about this a little bit, speaking to the federal and state level, but how do you work specifically with Lancaster County legislation to continue to grow your chamber and achieve your mission and goals?
It is vital that an organization like ours and that represents 11,000 businesses, half of the workforce, has a relationship with our elected officials at any level. And that's county, that's state, that's federal. And we put, so Heather Valutis, who is our president and CEO, previously was the advocacy director, and has built a lot of those relationships. We have a new team member since Heather moved into her role as I know we have a public policy coordinator, Kat DeSantis, who is working specifically to maintain and grow those relationships. And that changes, right? Those landscapes change every single time there's an election. That relationship semi-changes every time. And so to have somebody and a team, essentially, of people that are consistently banging the same drum and saying the same things, that are listening to the business community and able to give that, provide that feedback, but can consistently be in those relationships is really important. And so I say that as from a political perspective, we have a great relationship with the County of Lancaster, and particularly as we think about growth for Lancaster County, with the Planning Commission. And so we've oftentimes partner with them. We are a partner for PLACE with the PLACE 2040. Which is the county's comprehensive plan. So it looks at what by 2040, Places 2040, what does our place look like? And that looks at how are we using land? What does economic landscape look like? What does infrastructure look like? What does housing look like? And how do we do that effectively with a lens of equity, and how are we growing Lancaster County? And so being able to partner with them, have a say, have a relationship and a feedback loop. They appreciate the business feedback and they come to us when they're looking for it. We've been able to give them platform in a way that's really healthy for them to get that feedback. And then we know that we're in good hands when we think about how, that planning process moves and how it grows and how we can be a part of it. And so there's a couple different areas where that comes into is on the political aspect of it, but then really on the people that are moving and grooving and making decisions, or at least looking to create the recommendations for how our community grows.
Yeah. So a lot of it is when you think about advocacy, it's being at the table to represent business in that conversation. And so, other ways that we've done that, we have Wake Up to the Issues, which we might bring the experts in to talk about some of these issues from an advocacy standpoint, or that space for talking about reentry and what does that look like to reenter the workforce after a time being incarcerated, and what does it look like for transportation, to create transportation. And we're not the experts in these areas, but we a lot of times are looking to advance what is needed for the business community to be successful. And then our pro-business agenda, we'll take position statements on relevant legislation or efforts, but a lot of it is partnerships.
I feel like in the work that we do, we work a month or two ahead, and sometimes I get stressed about thinking about, oh my God, we're already talking about 2024, and the fact that you're talking about 2040 just blows my mind.
And a lot of these, if we think about it from what legislation changes, so I'll use this as an example, the Pennsylvania corporate net income tax. The chamber has been advocating for lowering the corporate net income tax for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Just 2 summers ago, 2022, that finally changed. And so it is a lot of the work that's being done underneath that's changing landscape. And this is not just us, this is other folks in advocacy in Lancaster County, but it is changing landscape, but it takes a while, right? They're not the quick, easy, we did this or we did that. It's no, 30 years.
Right.
We've been trying to say that we need to lower that corporate net income tax. And so what does that, those are the same things, right? Housing is going to be we're going to have to keep talking about it and keep talking about it.
Even
and so,
workforce legislation for childcare specifically.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is longer term. And so it's just really being able to keep up and keep relational with it and keep in partnership with people and having those seats at the table. So
Yeah. That's wild.
Just a small plug, because we are here because we also do a podcast for young professionals. So we earlier this month took a number of young professionals to Harrisburg to talk about how they can become advocates, how they can get involved in our efforts, and what is happening at the state level with the PA Chamber, with some of our partners like McNeese, Wallace, and Nurek, and how do young professionals contribute and share their voice in this space. And so, our public policy coordinator, Kat, she, I think we're going to really grow in this area for young professionals, which is really exciting because a lot of young professionals, I think, can become disenfranchised when it comes to advocacy, especially around issues that might be affecting their workplace. And so, we're excited to be able to step into a space and say, how do we empower our young business professionals to advocate for the things that matter to them?
Yeah.
Definitely.
I feel like that is crucial because I think, too, that our mindsets are maybe very different than our predecessors. And sometimes you almost feel like, at least for me, I don't want to speak for everyone, but as a young professional, it's almost like my voice doesn't matter as much because I'm still new here. I'm still trying to figure this out. So I feel like I can't have a say in that. And so it's just really encouraging to hear that you guys are doing work to show like, no, like you have a voice here. And
there's space, right?
Yeah.
Like there's space, and there's space to learn and educate. And I think that's the other thing for the systems that exist, how best that works. And so how can we educate you on how to do that?
Right.
So that you feel empowered to do it, right? So that you feel like, no, my voice does matter. It may feel different, but it matters. And so getting into that space in that way too is really helpful. It's helpful because you're the next generation of people that are making decisions, right? And so if we don't start to incorporate some of that in the way that we're thinking or hearing from a young professional, then that's how things, remain in the same way as they've always been. And
Exactly.
so, but education and empowerment is kind of the two main things there. So,
Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah.
Snaps.
I feel like, well, why don't we just jump into young business professionals, your Young Professionals Network. Why don't you just kind of give us a rundown of how your roles sort of create that space for young professionals?
well, I'm going to let Ashley take most of this because Ashley runs our Young Professionals Network. I am just on the side. No, I still consider myself a young professional.
Yeah.
And so, but I have benefited from a lot of the work when, we started the Young Professionals Network 15 plus years ago. Yes, 15 years ago.
Looking at me like I've been around.
I don't know, did it say it on a date on something that you've looked at? I think it was 2008. So whenever
I think it
that
was too.
2008 is when the Young Professional started. So I I've reaped benefits from the program, not only as a young professional because I work for the chamber, but also because they've been around for, as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
As long as I've been in the workforce. So I'll let you kind of talk into.
Well, the pandemic was almost the perfect opportunity for the Young Professionals Network to sit. It took a little bit of a back burner, young professionals.
And by that
really
she means
getting
no
out.
one was doing anything. I was trying my best.
Molly was doing a fantastic job
I would
getting
do
people
like one
together
virtual
for-
happy hour a month that 3 people showed up for. And I was like, listen, this isn't working.
Yeah.
But we got to assess what is the role of Young Professionals Network in the broader chamber scope. And we were able to kind of regroup and came up with 3 different pillars of the program. So it's really designed to engage, equip, and empower young professionals to be collaborative leaders who are passionate about shaping the community of Lancaster. And so those pieces, you have the Engage. So of course, we just had YPN Engage, the advocacy event. So there's a level of like getting out, whether that's engage in networking, engage with each other, but there's a level of relationship building. We also have Equip, so we do, some professional development, whether it's a one-off session or we bring in a third-party consultant, one of our partners, and they're facilitating a training for us. And then the Empower is really, taking that information and what do you do with it? So a lot of times what falls under the Empower pillar is like the podcast. We're giving you information, and then we hope that you feel empowered to do something with that information, whether it's advocate for yourself in the workplace, start a conversation about a new idea, reflect on your own. We had Katie Sando talk about purpose on one of our episodes, whether it's reflect on, your own personal journey. So, those pieces, we really want people to feel empowered by the resources that we're giving out. And so those are the 3 areas. We really want people to expand their network, and the chamber is known for its networking, but we also are really focused on like the learning piece and then the takeaways that people get. But one of my favorite parts of that, we started Next Gen Mentoring, which is kind of a concierge mentoring program where we might take some folks who are interested and build a small cohort and pair them with more experienced professionals. And that is a really great way because when they apply, young professionals get to talk about their challenges. And so our job then is to find more experienced professionals who have walked through similar challenges and pair them so that they don't feel alone on their journey and that they have someone they can talk to for advice. We try to bring them to some events that we do, bring them together so they can digest that information together. But it's been a really fun part of the program. And then we also, one of my other favorite pieces is I get to do a lot of one-on-ones with young professionals. Now, not everyone has done this with me. We have over 500 people in our Young Professionals Network, and that's how many people we've interacted with since 2020 when we relaunched the program. But I love sitting down. There's nothing more life-giving than sitting down with a young professional and saying, what is working for you right now? How can we support you at the chamber? What programming do you need? What connections do you need? We've seen people shift into new roles that are better suited for their skill sets or interests. We've seen people start their own mentoring opportunities and mentoring relationships through connections that we've made. We have a young professionals advisory group. We've brought in so many ideas, really lots of innovation on how the program looks. I mean, even in 2020, when we were rebuilding the program, it looks much different in what we're launching in 2024 than it did then. And so a lot of that is just because we're constantly, as Adam Grant says, thinking again and trying new innovative ideas that come from all of the young professionals we serve.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think that's so powerful too, because I personally was someone who in college kind of like shied away from the networking and stuff like that, because I think it just made me uncomfortable because I didn't have the experience. So having a space to sort of go and practice that and have honest conversations with someone who has been in that same situation is inspiring for someone who's looking to sort of expand their career.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like I have gone to a few YPN events. And I think for me, it's always very valuable to know that I'm not alone in my journey, and thinking that this is someone who is like a very different career path than me, but they're also struggling with this same issue. And I don't feel, it's just nice feeling not as alone, especially going to college and then coming back, and it's the transition to adulting was very difficult. And so I think that really helps me. So yeah, I am a fan. I'm a fan of your work.
We're big fans over here.
Fan of your work. Love that.
So we have to talk about the podcast, of course.
We're going to plug it for you here.
Can you just kind of explain where that idea stemmed from?
Yes.
Ashley was new to the chamber.
I walked in and I was like,
We should start a podcast.
we should start a podcast.
Yes.
And Heather and I looked at her and said, okay, go.
Yeah, they were like, you should start,
You
a,
should
podcast.
start a podcast. That sounds good. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it was. It was like, I'd like to start a podcast. Okay, start the podcast. That sounds good. Like, we've not been in this space before, and then you just kind of ran with it.
Really exploratory.
Was meant to be very exploratory.
Yeah.
It was
Now
a
we're-
huge learning up. I was
yeah.
like, I love podcasts. I listen to many. And there's a few chambers out there that have young professional podcasts. So I kind of listened to them. And when I brought the idea up, they were kind of thinking, like, how do we reach young professionals in a different way as well? So it wasn't like this existed in a vacuum.
Yeah.
But I think, the podcast, there's so many reasons people start podcasts, but really it's like that accessible information. Anyone could drive. It's evergreen. You could find an episode. We still have people that are finding last year's episodes and are listening to them. And or this isn't relevant to me right now, but I'm going to bookmark that for later.
Right.
And so having that digestible, accessible way to communicate information, and it's really fun. I mean, we showcase a beer. We get to talk to a lot of really fun people that are in our chamber membership, people we partner with on a regular basis.
Yeah. I think the content has been the most exciting part of the whole thing. And so kudos to Ashley, because Ashley cultivates who that's going to be, writes the questions, gets the kind of topic thing together, and is very on the pulse of people or things that are happening in the community and wanting to make sure it feels relevant for the moment for our young professionals and really anybody. I mean, I think that's what we've learned over the last 2 years has been this content, while amazing for young professionals, I've got people who aren't professionals coming up and being like, that was an awesome podcast. I was really interested to hear from Shayla Hutner and from the city of Lancaster and Ed Harris from Discover Lancaster talk about the relationship between tourism. Like, that was just an interesting topic. And so I think the joy for me has come from being able to have these conversations and have them shared in a way that we just haven't done before. And, a lot of times those happen at events, or they happen, in private meetings, and, we're having the conversation with Ed and Shayla with 4 of us or 5 of us around the table. But now we get to share that with the rest of the county, rest of the world.
Yeah.
World.
Yeah.
Are
We've got
you
a few people.
worldwide?
We are worldwide.
We are worldwide.
Oh my gosh, what a flex.
Obviously, our target is Lancaster. So a lot of our content
So
is
some
very
people confuse us
specific.
with Lancaster, South Carolina, and Lancaster, California. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
But we do have a strong like mid-Atlantic. We've reached like the West Coast, and then we
Wow.
have reached around the world, which
Yeah.
is pretty cool that someone somewhere is tuning in to hear about what it's like here in
Yeah.
Lancaster,
Yeah.
whether that's
Yeah.
our workforce trends or it's how we're finding purpose in the work that we do.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
That is so
Yeah.
cool. Because even like someone, do you ever think that maybe it's someone who's like visiting or about to visit Lancaster? Like, I remember you did an episode with Kenda Frazier.
Yeah.
So I feel like her episode where she is giving like the tours of everything and kind of showcasing what Lancaster does, I would listen to that if I was like about to visit Lancaster. So that's so cool to think.
Or about to move here.
Yeah.
And so how do we, thinking about our Young Professionals Network in particular, I think what Ashley's done really well in the last couple of years has been thinking about it as a tool also for talent attraction. For those of us who go away and come back, right? And
Everyone.
saying, okay, so what does it look like? I'm going back to my hometown. This doesn't feel great. And I'm
Yeah.
transitioning. I'm making this massive transition. Oh, but I can listen to something without having to go somewhere and not know anybody and listen about what's happening in the community that I'm going to call home. And so that's like the beauty of it is it's so diverse in speaker and topic and things like that it really gets to businesses, gets to young professionals, but gets to kind of like who we are as a community too.
Yeah.
I foresee some growth in the future for the podcast. We're really excited. Keeping it under wraps for now, but we definitely have some plans just based on how well it's been received in the community for what we're
Yeah.
doing next with the podcast. And I think, bigger, better, and I think a lot of young professionals will still be very excited about the content, and we'll also be reaching our more experienced professionals in the community.
Yeah. That's super exciting. We're excited to see
Yeah.
where it goes.
Excited to see it. Yeah. Inspired by it
Following
too.
along.
Yeah. Lily, you skipped some questions.
Sorry, my bad. Just going with the flow.
I love that for
Edit
you.
it back in.
What do you want?
Okay.
I don't even know where we are.
I don't either.
Because mine
I'm-
doesn't look like yours either. So I'm, again, just going to
Chucking her. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how you work with mentorships and connecting students with young professionals or young professionals with more experienced professionals. And so Inspire Lancaster, which is a fairly new initiative. No?
Yeah,
Yeah,
fairly
okay.
no.
Yeah. So do you just want to elaborate on that and how it helps connect more? Because this one I feel like is more focused towards students and young professionals. So how are you connecting and using this program to build the bridge?
That is a great question. We love Inspire Lancaster, so it is a tool that we've developed in partnership with the Lancaster County STEM Alliance, a tool that the initiative CRL uses to make a lot of their connections between students and employers. And so basically we did relaunch this fall a new website design, which has been really exciting to roll out over the last couple of weeks with our business and education coordinator, Julianne Flood. But it really addresses some of the greatest challenges to businesses, which a lot of the work-based learning opportunities that students are looking for. Internships, job shadowing, it's done piecemeal. So you might have a handful of students who have a connection to this employer or a teacher specifically who has a connection to this employer, and they'll be able to get some of those opportunities together. Or you might have someone who does career services in that high school, and they have a handful of connections, or more than a handful of connections, but maybe it's smaller to their community. So what Inspire Lancaster does is it pulls all of that into one place. And so any educator, any student can go on and look through the work-based learning opportunities that employers are offering for K through 12. And so that could be for your kindergartners, a guest speaker that talks about like the day in the life of a firefighter. Or it could be for your middle school students, a business tour. Come to Tower, see
Right.
what it's like to be in marketing. And then it could be for our older students in high school, it could be a job shadow. It could be an internship, an apprenticeship, or a co-op, something that's more involved, hands-on, and longer term. So a lot of that, I mean, the point of the tool is to really engage employers. So like, get your opportunities out here. We know that employers are doing this work already, so let's put it in one place for our schools. And that's been really exciting to see. We've had so many businesses interested. I think up to 80 businesses have been interested in joining in this iteration of Inspire. and something like 38 opportunities on Inspire right now since we just relaunched, which is really great. And in our Discovering Paths, the high school mentoring program, we use Inspire then as the tool to make some of those connections, because students have to do 2 job shadows before the end of the year, and get really that look at what they might be interested in. And a lot of times those job shadows are either, I really want to do this job, or I can cross this job off my list. But we're hoping that Inspire really serves as that facilitator of those connections.
Yeah.
The challenges employers, I think, as we think about next generation of workforce, we have homegrown talent, and, we have 13 colleges and universities across the county, but a lot of times people are leaving the county. But what will make them want to come back? And that might be a network that's built already. That might be somewhere that they know that they loved working, or they visited in 8th grade, and they'll want to go back and see if they're hiring. So it creates opportunities for our employers to create their own pipelines in some way, right? And so I think the challenge for the employers is to, even if you don't have anything that exists, you can talk about your business.
Right.
So throw that up there as an opportunity. Or, it can be as little or as much as an employer wants, but just some level of connection helps drive that kind of workforce, homegrown talent pipeline.
And Julianne, our business and education coordinator, I mean, she is the perfect resource. She knows everything about work-based learning, has been really involved in Career Ready Lancaster and building out definitions, templates for employers, all sorts of things to make it easier for employers to create those opportunities. But like Molly said, work-based learning is one of the largest opportunities for employers to retain talent here in Lancaster. And that's why it's a huge part of our career readiness program, Discovering Paths, because without that component, students might not know that there's an employer right here for them. And so they'll leave. And so it's really, and we have witnessed great success from people who have work-based learning opportunities, especially starting at, the younger you can go, the deeper they're connected into the community. So it's really, Inspire is an incredible tool. And, for people who are listening, if you're an employer, jump on, get connected.
Get connected to us. Yeah.
I feel like that is such, and this was a question that I had written down right before we started, but for our experience in college, so we graduated in the COVID era, and at least for me, my professors, the Career Center, they very much put the message out of, it's going to be a lot harder for you than it has been in the past, because in the past you compete with people in your area and you're trying to get a job, but everyone else in this job. And now you're competing with like the entire country because remote work has become so popular. So I feel like within the Inspire Lancaster, it's almost kind of building confidence of the Lancaster students to say, I'm starting this journey early, and like I can find a work around here.
Yeah, this is a place I want to come back to.
Yeah, because I feel like with remote work, it's really been like, oh, I could move anywhere and work from my couch. So why would I stay in Lancaster County when I could live in LA or like?
Yeah.
And if
So,
you're,
well, the cost of living first.
Right.
Yeah.
First off,
the cost of
there's a
living.
couple of reasons.
There's a couple of reasons, but you're absolutely right. I mean, can't stress enough that mentoring, that building relationships, that having a network, whatever that looks like for you, is key to feeling better when you get here, for getting a job in the first place, for all of those things. And so that's what a lot of the work that we're doing in business education partnerships does, is to help to create some of that, so it's a little less burdenous for someone who's coming out of college. It's one tapped area we're kind of working into a little bit. I think we've done a lot where we've gone into colleges and universities. We have the chamber hosts, Heather hosts a college president's meeting quarterly, so she's in touch with all of them that are around in the area. But that's what we've enjoyed doing, I think, has been, we've been up to E-Town College. when we were at their career services like night for seniors, and we got to talk about the Young Professionals Network and the Chamber and Lancaster County in general, and like why we love it so much. I was at F&M's recent Fall into Lancaster event, and I had a really great conversation with one student who was looking for some context in film. We've now gotten him connected to that, and so it's even for how do we kind of utilize that. We don't have a specific thing for it yet. Yet is the key there.
There's a lot of ideation.
There's a lot of ideation happening, but even for our college students who maybe have come from out of the area to Lancaster to go to school here, what does it look like to keep them here too?
Yeah.
And provide some of that same network building.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. So let's talk about the future.
The future.
Sure. No,
What does the future of Young Professionals Network look like? Anything exciting up the pipeline that you can share?
That you're allowed to share.
Yeah.
Well, I think
You
Molly
heard it here first.
I think Molly just kind of shared a little bit about, looking at how do we engage our early career professionals who are about to graduate with the Young Professionals Network. How do we get them
I didn't know I was giving that away. My bad.
It's like foreshadowing.
Just read my
Queuing you
notes.
up. I was queuing you up.
It was perfect. But that's definitely one. I would say the advocacy extension to the Young Professionals Network, our public policy coordinator Kat has a lot of ideas. I think we had a lot of interest around this pilot event that we did in Harrisburg, and so I there's a potential there as well. But certainly, it's always, every year is going to be different. Every year we change our programming slightly in ways that better suit the needs of young professionals. And so, we send out surveys, we hear feedback from people, whether it's anecdotal or it's more data-driven, looking at kind of what young professionals are doing across the country at other chambers. But I think the thing that I'm really looking forward to the most is Experience Lancaster, which we piloted this year, so it's not entirely new. But when you talk about people who are new to Lancaster or who lived in Lancaster and returned, this is an opportunity. It's a partnership with Discover Lancaster, and we get people in the door to so many different experiences. So we've had wine and cheese on the Strasburg Railroad, which, did you know, it's not just for children? Because that was my perception of the Strasburg Railroad.
It's like the wine and cheese is not for children.
Yes,
Not for
it was
children.
great. It was so fun.
Yeah, so that was one of them. We also did a food tour of Lancaster City with Kendra Frazier of Unique Lancaster Experiences. So next year we have 3 up our sleeve and different experiences throughout the county. And that's probably one of the areas we'll really be able to get more of our college students involved with. But also, I think it's been great because I do hear from people, especially the food tour. I've lived in Lancaster my entire life, and I didn't know these restaurants were here in Lancaster City. So it's just been such a really great tool to explore. We also have something new called Skills Labs, which just launched this fall. I think Alex
and
at
Marissa
one.
went to that first one.
And so those Skills Lab are going to be deep dives into a really specific topic. And then we have our second year of our Emerging Leadership Development training with Laura Shantz and her team. And that really looks at, okay, you're getting ready, you're early career professionals, but you have your eyes set on becoming a leader in your organization someday. So what are the fundamentals you need to succeed? And so those are some of the areas that we've really grown in and that will remain consistent. Of course, our mixers are so fun. We were at Urban Air earlier this year. Who knows what will be next year. It's very exciting. And then, of course, some growth and changes with the podcast in the best ways.
And we see the Young Professionals Network as such a tap into early career professionals. We say by 40 by age or by heart. So it's anybody who also just wants to experience the program or do these types of things. And we see that as such the next generation. And so we also challenge if you're a part of the Young Professionals Network, or if your company is a member of the Chamber, you have access to all the Young Professionals Network. And so really trying to also encourage businesses who are members with us to send your young professionals. What does that do from a retention standpoint for you, right? Like if they feel like there's a resource, a learning opportunity, a network opportunity, experience opportunity that your employer is encouraging you to go to, that's such like, there's such a strong relational element to that. That's like, okay, cool. You're investing in the things that I want to be doing or cool things that I can do. And so I'm going to invest more of my time and loyalty to you. And so we see that as such an opportunity. So that's why we do change things up and work on things based on the needs of this group. But from a business and employer's perspective too, we just want there to stay some connection between the employees and their employer.
And that experience piece has been so important.
Yeah.
I think that shift really has occurred in the last 5 years or so.
Yep.
People are looking for experiences. I mean, I'm a huge, like, don't get me Christmas gifts, get me a Christmas experience.
Yep.
And so looking at that from our framework of learning and engagement, you know, how does the networking become an experience where people get to do things and they're not just, it's not your typical networking of like, here's my business card, nice to meet you, here's what I can do for you, here's what you can do for me. And so, you know, taking it to the next level of looking deeper into how do we build that authentic relationship where people want to come back or they get coffee with those people they met at the networking event. How do we look at, you know, we have Experience Lancaster, but then how do we make our professional development hands-on and experiential? Are there opportunities for people to experience other areas of what we offer in an experiential capacity? You know, whether it's like an industry tour or, you know, some other things that we offer that typically young professionals shy away from. How do we get them more engaged in the experience side of what we do?
Yeah. I love that because I feel like for two reasons. One, I think going to a very traditional networking event I think too that also, and we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, work-life balance, where your networking and your professionalism does not always have to be in that traditional sense, and you should still be able to do the things that you enjoy and experience things and not always thinking about work. So I think you blend those two together, and I really like that. So
I mean, there was nothing like the connections made over the laser tag tournament that we ran at Urban Air. It was so competitive.
that is hilarious.
But absolutely hysterical and one of the best times I think I've had in a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool. That is cool. Okay. So we've talked a little about the YPN side of things, but the business side, the business trends, what do you see even, so we've reflected on the last 10 years, what do you see on the next 10 years of Lancaster businesses and those trends?
So funny. We talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
So in this meeting and anticipating needs, in some ways, we're the ones that are having to anticipate some of that and provide the right person who can talk about it and get you the information and resources you need before we know that it's coming or as it's coming down, and really trying to also localize some of that, which can be difficult. And so we looked at both of our notes, and it's funny because it's the exact same notes written in the same thing. Just mine are in different order because I wrote it differently. Anyway, we see a couple different things. So, and I'll talk through some of them, and I'll just let you kind of take some of them too. We're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions as people are retiring. We know that they're retiring. We know that there was this silver tsunami, we call it, of leaving the workforce and retiring really post-COVID. And so what does it look like to merge? Yeah. People are open to buying businesses. People are open to selling their businesses. And so we're seeing that in a lot of ways. And how do you do that really well? And what resources do you need to be able to do that? And so we're trying to offer into some of that as well. I would say AI and the use of technology. Every CEO across the world is talking about artificial intelligence. And then I lump technology under there because I think that there's a strong assessment in looking at, if we can't fill workforce needs, what is the technology that we need to do that? And some of that is AI and some of that is just traditional technology. And so that's something we're pretty consistently talking about across industry, which is really interesting. So we're talking about it in the ag industry. I'm talking about it in the marketing industry. We're talking about it in, really is a true kind of span of industry that's talking about how we're using artificial intelligence. classic supply chain and inflation, right? We're constantly talking about it. It's constantly changing at a faster pace than we traditionally have seen in the last 30 years. But it's something that really means a lot to our businesses. It's something that affects the day-to-day of what they're doing. And so really trying to keep some of those things. And then I was going to say workplace structure and changes. We've alluded to this a little bit in conversation, but we've been through an influx of how the workplace changes, whether you are remote, whether you are a flexible workplace, whether you are a hybrid workplace, whether you are, it varies. I think people have been testing things, finding that some things work and some things don't. And so how do I work into some level of workplace structure, keeping culture at the front of it, and trying to create a good workplace while trying to examine what does this work, what do I need from my employees from a productivity perspective, and what can I give them from a benefit perspective so I'm able to compete for talent.
Yeah. And also in that workforce, like specific to Lancaster, the EDC and the Workforce Development Board did a report and shared it, I think, earlier this fall at the Workforce Summit. But basically, I mean, workforce is a challenge. It's a challenge to get enough people into these roles across the country. But specifically in Lancaster, we're doing a great job of sustaining our workforce population, but what we're not doing is bringing in talent that's going to fill the gap. So as we see time go on in the next 10 years, that gap will increase. Right. And so if we continue to sustain, the gap will widen. But if we can continue to attract and then retain that talent, those young people who are going to college, getting them back, bringing in new people from the area, and we have a really
skilling up those that we do have. Like, what does that look like? I mean, we have a really tight market. We have a 2.4% unemployment rate, which is very small. If you think about like how often people move jobs too, like that's just, there's only 2.4% of our population that aren't working. And that's for a variety of reasons, right? And so with that, paired with this, for every one person we lose to retirement, or for every one person, what is the statistic? The statistic is for every one new job that comes online, we have one person to fill that job. What that doesn't take into account is the 8 people retiring.
Yes. Right.
And so again, as the further we get, the harder that's going to be. And so taking some time now to really think about strategically as a county, how are we doing that? And then how is the chamber involved in that is kind of key to
it
what
goes to that point about like the future thinking. So like we're doing a great job sustaining our workforce right now.
Right.
But when we know that this is on the horizon of this gap will continue to emerge with that, what did you call it? The silver
tsunami.
Silver tsunami. That's a new one. I like that. So, just being cognizant of that and how you're even workforce planning as an employer. Yeah. The other two major trends I think we would see, and another one that's Lancaster specific, is this community responsibility. I mean, we have Extra Give in November. It is just the best day in Lancaster. Everyone comes together. We're celebrating. We're giving into the community. But specifically for employers at the forefront, there's always this tradition in Lancaster of giving back and philanthropy. And so that will continue to be on the forefront of employers' minds moving forward, is how are we giving back in the best way? There's a lot of movement in the nonprofit world of, how do we address systems. So, how are we giving to things that will change systems to impact the world? How are we giving to local causes that will fix immediate needs? And so employers will definitely be thinking through that. Also, and you kind of touched on this with when you're talking about values, but conscious customers, and I would also say conscious employees. So, thinking through social issues, and there's an expectation for companies to have statements and have positions and to showcase their values in a way that's transparent and almost vulnerable for employers. And so that will continue to be, we anticipate that will continue to be a trend, and we'll see more and more companies being asked to address these different issues in our communities.
Love that.
Cool.
That's well-rounded.
We tried our best. Go Lancaster. So funny that we have the same ones.
That was amazing.
I don't know if there's much you can spill about the chamber dinner.
There is not too much I can share. Right. Other than we've started the process. We always look for someone that will be obviously useful to our business community. I think the things that we're excited about consistently are the theme. So we have been talking a bit about theme as we've rolled around some names, themes that feel relevant to this moment. The things that we've been excited about from last year has been this actual generational shift, which is kind of interesting. The room looks more diverse in a bunch of different ways. And so what does that look like for the event? It's been around for as long as the Chamber has, so 150 years. And so we're constantly looking for the evolving and constantly looking to create a great experience. But unfortunately, I do have all the secrets.
That's
okay.
totally
It
fine.
keeps me close.
here.
I don't
It
even
seems
know.
to know.
I
Yeah.
don't even know.
We can give
It's
you a
just a
what if
while.
scenario.
Okay.
If
see.
money were no object, who would your dream speaker be?
I don't know if I can share that.
Because it's the person. Isn't it?
Oh, no. Okay, well,
It can literally be anyone.
try to think of what I can.
It doesn't have to be relevant to the chamber. Just you personally.
I
Who
know,
would you
but
love
we
to speak
can.
to?
We
Okay,
have
how
power.
about this?
We have some power here.
If you
Okay, dead or
rephrase
alive?
the question.
Okay, dead or alive. That feels better. No, I don't know. I'll give you one name that I love that I don't think we're ever gonna get.
Okay.
I really wish we could. I would love it, but never say never. How about that? Never say never. Ryan Reynolds.
Oh,
my gosh,
God.
yeah.
I really would love Ryan Reynolds.
He would be amazing.
Talk about someone who has like star power. If you've watched Welcome to Wrexham, also, I mean, like cultural power.
Yeah.
But really strong business power that people are starting to see a little bit more with him because he's a little bit more obvious about it with the couple of companies that he owns. More so than I think some other angel investors and things. You know, and Ashton Kutcher's been on our list for a while. And you don't know that, but he does a ton of angel investing into business. And so, but Ryan's just, I mean, it would be funny.
Yeah.
It would be hopefully
amazing.
sell out. So, I mean, that would be the ideal.
Do you have one?
Oh.
Look at me like, don't. No, I'm just kidding. I feel like it is so secretive. But the reason it's secretive is because we love the anticipation of it,
Yeah.
right? Like that's part of the brand of
We're
it is like there's this
excited.
anticipation to it for our sponsors, for our attendees, for the community, and then it goes into theme and stuff like that. So that's why we keep it, I think, a little more close to our chests than maybe the average
Understandable.
event would be.
I'm going to say such a cliche answer, but I think my dream one, and you already know who I'm going to say. And I'm going to say this person, and it's not for the
is the
reason you
economy.
expect. Right, but like the marketing goddess that is Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
If I could just have a 15-minute, what are you marketing? Like, how are you literally changing the world right now off of a sentence or just everything she's done? That would probably be my dream speaker. So if she's
We'll
on the
work
list,
on it for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure
she's
she's
a potential.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll add her
sure
to
she's
the list.
pretty cheap too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for
I don't
sure.
think
I
she's
think she'll
doing
do it for free.
anything.
I think if we
Yeah,
maybe just got
calendar's
one
probably pretty
ticket
clear
to
next year.
the, I think that's, one, if I pay for a ticket, would she?
Right, we
come
paid
and
for
speak?
tickets,
Right.
so we could just ask her. What if we just
Okay.
called Taylor
Yeah,
up
let's just call her.
and see what happens?
I mean, it's a good name to add to the list.
Does it work to connect?
She may or may not already be on the list, but also this
She's
is
like a
me being
dream.
like, yeah. And Heather went to the concert too, so she's like,
Yeah,
and you
I was
went.
there. Yeah.
Oh my
Nice.
Yeah. I would just say I am a book girly. So the person that I would say is a famous author who writes a lot about vulnerability, and that's the person that I think right now in this moment would be like, oh, I would love to get that person, but I'm not going to say names, so you can do some investigating.
Well, we're excited to hear who it is, and I hope that Michael Mattis is listening because I would love a ticket to the annual dinner. I went last year, so I think because our business development specialist was in Greece, she was like, I can't go. Do you want to go? I'm like, yeah, I actually do. So now it's a tradition.
That's awesome.
He has to bring me
How do
again.
I get there?
And
We would
maybe-
love to see more young professionals
Yeah.
at annual dinner.
Okay.
Knock on the
So we'll
door.
tell him that it's young professionals now. We're taking over.
He's out.
You've reached your limit. I'm sorry. Just kidding. Okay. So the last fun question we have, if you could see any type of business in Lancaster, what would it be? Like, what do you think is missing? We came up with a cat cafe. If we would love to see it. I would probably be there every day. I don't know if you had a different one.
No, I mean, I'm on board with the cat cafe. I'm more of a dog person, but I think it's
We could do a puppy-
cute idea.
I'm
puppy
bored.
cafe.
I'd see it.
I would walk past it and smile.
Yeah.
I just maybe wouldn't go in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so can we talk about this all the time? So we always ask the question, honestly, probably once a week. I will hear of somebody that's doing something or an entrepreneur or something that's happening that I'm like, that's so cool, but what if we did this? And then I say goodbye to everybody. And I say, goodbye, I'm going to start this business. So earlier this week, Heather had her nails done. She's like, I did my nails. I was like, are we quitting the chamber and starting our own nail salon? Like, is that what we're doing? And so I feel like we have this conversation all the time about like, what would we do if we weren't working in the chamber? What would the career be? Would we do? Because it's actually because we see so many cool things happening and so many cool jobs that we're like, what are we doing? Like, you have a really cool job. I'd like to go. I'd like to do that. But I think mine would be, and you potentially know this one, is a karaoke room bar type situation, so that there's like a bar and then there's these rooms, like private karaoke rooms. They have them other places. We don't have one around here. I really love karaoke, and there's not a great place to do karaoke.
So fun.
And so it's like private rooms, and you can actually bring in everything. And the other places that I've been to, and you can bring like your own drinks, your own food, and you just rent and you just do karaoke for like as long as you want. You like rent it by the hour.
That's so cool.
Write that
That's
down.
what I would start.
That is
That's
so
what we're
cool.
missing.
So
Or just generally a karaoke bar, but mostly.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna
honestly.
say,
If
we
you
don't
do
even
know
have
of one, let me know. But
Yeah.
I haven't found one that I like yet.
I feel like it does change depending on the,
The
week.
week.
Like what we're interested. Like sometimes it's food for me, like what type of restaurant. But then this is funny. I'm laughing a little bit because I was sharing this question with our president and CEO, Heather, and I was like, right now I'm really feeling like a cafe that you can go to, and they focus on a board game. And so like if you want to go play Sorry, like they have all these Sorry set up, and she was like, we used to have a board game cafe and it closed because I think the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so maybe not the best business.
Okay, back to
idea.
square one. Back to square
Back
one.
to square one. But I was like, oh, it'd be so cool, like, if you had this space where there was just people who were interested in that game could go play it. Like, I'm a huge Monopoly person, but a lot a friends don't play Monopoly. So, come on, people. If you like to
So
play
you would meet
Monopoly,
up with like strangers to play.
meet up with strangers to play.
Okay.
But it's like a cafe, too.
Cute.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
that
would
is a
go
cute
there.
We
idea.
can do
Never
right
thought of
next
that.
to your cat cafe.
Yeah. The
could
cat
have,
be
like,
both.
play
Like,
cafe.
Could be both.
Some nights it's cats,
yeah.
some nights it's Monopoly.
Yeah. Sometimes the cats play the board games with you.
Amazing. Done.
Yeah.
Check it.
Okay.
Ticket to Ride.
Oh my gosh,
You
I
know how I
love
feel about
Ticket to
Ticket to
Ride.
Ride.
Cat is sitting on the
I love
cat's
I'm
on the board.
losing
Now
it.
we're
That'd be
we're
amazing.
devolving.
I love Ticket to Ride.
This is why it's a 70-minute. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we're honestly doing so great on time.
Okay.
We don't have anything on us to tell time. It could be like 6:00 for all we know.
Right.
You're like,
It's
we're
getting
doing
dark.
great.
It's dark out. So.
For everyone, it's 5:02. For everyone's information. But I feel like that's it.
I do have
Whole
one
different
thing. Just urge you, as a young professional, ask your employer if you're a member of the Lancaster Chamber. Because if you are, you have access to everything that Young Professionals Network offers, as well as all the other events, resources, initiatives, things that we do. But we're really pushing, I think, more recently than not, that all of the employees of a member company have access to things. You are also all members. And so we really want to make sure that people know that, are educated on the opportunities that are available to them. When I say half of the workforce has access to it, I mean half the workforce has access to it. And so really wanting to make sure that young professionals in particular know that your employer, you should see it as a benefit of your employer. Right? Like you get healthcare, you get paid time off, and I have access to the things that the Lancaster Chamber offers. And so we want to see ourselves as that. We would want our young professionals and other employees of our member companies to see us as that too.
Yeah. I think that is so important because, at least from my standpoint, it's very much that is only a business development specialist, or she's the only one or he is the only one that would go to those events, and kind of shifting that mentality of, no, as content specialists, even though we're not talking to clients or networking with them as much, we would still greatly benefit from these events. And I think that's something that even at Tower we can work on, is just because you're not interested in the business dev side of things, you will find great value here.
On our podcast, we have a little button that goes rah, rah, rah,
Yeah.
when we enjoy something that someone says. So in that moment when you just said that, I wanted to be like rah, rah, whatever, because that's exactly it. So yeah, thanks for offering that perspective.
Okay. Well, that's all we got for today's episode. Thank you so much to Ashley and Molly for coming and joining us and sharing your stories. By the time you're all listening to this, I hope that you are out of your Thanksgiving turkey comas. It will be a full week since, so that's a good recovery period.
Hopefully.
If not, stay strong. You'll get out of it eventually. And as always, our podcast comes out on the last Thursday of every month. You can find it on your favorite streaming platform. And this one you can find on YouTube. So if you're listening to us, switch over, even though it's the end now. So go watch it again on mute just to see all of our faces. Mm-hmm. You can also find us on social media at Tower Marketing on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And finally, for exclusive episode content, sign up for our podcast newsletter by visiting our site or clicking the link in our show notes. All right. See ya.